Hi, welcome to this week's edition of Blues Talk, where tonight John and myself will discuss Leinster's disappointing loss away to Ulster in Ravenhill and our final fixture of the season at home to Treviso in what is now a must-win fixture. Jason would join us, only he said something about Central America, tax returns, and has to talk to his bank manager. I don't know. Anyway, he's not with us this week. So John, anyway, game against Ulster up in Ravenhill. You were up there yourself.
I was. The first 40 minutes of it, I was actually even quite happy.
Yeah, because we were only 4 down at half time.
Well, if we'd have got it, we were attacking their line just before half time. And if we'd have got in, we might have just put a different complexion on the game. But predictably, what did we do? We knocked down in a maul just before the line. And then we did plenty of that. What the coaches call it? Not respecting the ball. So we didn't respect the ball at all. We just kept knocking it on. Even we lost 2 or 3 balls in mauls, knocked them on in the middle of a maul. Like that's some of them were kind of half stripped, but even so. And in the back line, the same thing. Just not respecting the ball, not respecting the football.
That was a disappointing thing, actually, because last week it looked like we kind of turned our maul around.
Yeah.
And we'd made it into something that was a bit more efficient. On Saturday, it looked like it was just a bit of... Our maul was back to being a little bit shambolic, and it looked like kind of just throwing numbers in it and some kind of nouveau lens approach to the whole thing.
Yeah. No, it was... It looked like we couldn't score if if the other team went for a shower, we still wouldn't have scored. We just managed to trip over our shoelaces in the 5 metre line, or it was just, I don't know, it was promising enough, as I said, before half time, but we just lost the run of ourselves. We ran out of ideas to there were times when in the backs we were starting to put a few little moves together, but it was all so predictable. Ulster players were just standing there waiting to clobber whoever got the ball, and didn't really matter which of them it was.
Is that a bit of indicative of our play this season, though, that we are an easy team to defend against? One of the Ulster coaches was interviewed near enough just after half time, and he said, Leinster are a very predictable team, we know how they're going to attack and we just have to defend against it. I mean, and he wasn't trying to score points or anything like that. He was just stating the facts. Is that not a bad thing?
Okay. It's that's shocking, and it's true, which is worse. So it's hard to see a plan, the way they talk about these shapes where you've got a triangle with runners where you've got options either side, and we don't have any of that. We've just guys standing around going, I wonder will I get the ball.
Well, we do have a shape. Unfortunately, it was designed by an Etch-a-Sketch, controlled by a toddler on acid, because that's the way some of our play looks. I mean, we don't look to have any direction. We don't look like we're in danger of threatening the try line. We get so far, and then the opposition decides, right, that's enough, and we're stopped.
And that's a common theme all season.
Yeah,
all season we've looked like we could get to the 5 metre line, get into the 22, and then run out of ideas. Are we supposed to get over that line?
No match refereed by George Clancy would be properly discussed without discussing the refereeing of George Clancy. He made a couple of significant decisions. Maybe some were wrong, maybe some were right. The 2 yellow cards in and of themselves. Yeah,
well, the first one, in my eyes, it could have been a yellow card or a penalty try. Certainly not both. Mm-hmm. Even the Ulster fans around me were saying,
"You're not a fan of the old double jeopardy, then, no?"
Jesus, we got away with that. They were quite, and that was what separated the sides at half time. Mm-hmm. Without that, we were 3 points up at half time. So yeah, I was actually defending George Clancy before the game, saying that he's probably one of the better refs in the country, and maybe he is. Him and John Lacey, I was
Does that not say more about the standard refereeing in
It
Ireland?
is.
No, seriously, I mean that. Does that not say more about the standard refereeing
is.
in Ireland than it does about George Clancy's abilities, which I do not rate?
Well, he seems to have games like he had that game in the World Cup where it was 280 minutes long or something, because he kept going to the TMO for everything. And he has these rubbish games, but then he'll have you string a set of games together and you go, actually that guy's pretty good. Then he's back to...
Yeah, well, there were 4 major calls in the match from what I could see, right? There were the 2 yellow cards.
The second one, sorry to interrupt you, the second one was fair enough. It was, especially since we'd already got the first one, it's kind of
Well, actually, I would have thought the first one was a stone bonker of a yellow card. It was definite. I thought the Fitzgerald one was very, very harsh. I mean, it was milliseconds. It was milliseconds between being a legitimate tackle and being, a tackle off the ball.
It looked worse when you played it back as well.
Yeah, in ultra slow mo, the gap is gonna be longer. Yeah. We'll come to the penalty try decision in a bit. And then the fourth one was Ulster took a quick line out. Referee called play on, and then Ulster decided to go back for the full line out from which they scored. Mm-hmm. Now, if they take the quick line out and the ref calls play on, then play on.
You have to play on.
I can't see how he could allow them to go back for that.
Well, there you go. Maybe he thought, maybe they didn't hear me.
Yeah, well, maybe. I doubt it though. And then, of course, the last decision was in fact one of the first ones was the penalty try.
Mm. Yeah, well, like I said, it was. You could actually have given either, but I think it was very harsh to give both.
I don't think the decision to give a penalty try was as egregious as some people think it was. I think that it was within the bounds of probability that a try could have been scored. Whether it would have been, I don't know. I mean, it's one where where you could say yes or no either way. You can make a decision. I don't think it could be.
He was never going to catch that ball, even if Carney hadn't been there, because you see where it bounced.
It did bounce very close, but I mean, you have to give if the player doesn't have an opportunity to make that thing, Look, the question was, should I think it was that one was a 50-50 call. I don't think the Luke Fitzgerald yellow card was a yellow card. I do think the Rob Kearney yellow card was a yellow card, and I think he blew it completely on the line out.
Well, I would agree on the I would agree about the Rob Kearney being a yellow card, but not a penalty try. The Luke, I would never have spotted it. It was down the other end of the pitch, but B, I wouldn't have seen that kind of. It was only when they replayed it, and then it looked shocking. The more you look at it, the worse it looked, because he was nowhere near the ball, and the player, he was actually the other side of play, and he held the guy back. So it just looks bad on repeat. But most referees wouldn't probably have spotted it.
Well,
was it actually the referee?
I don't know. I can't remember. I can't remember at the time.
Who spotted it?
But I mean, it was sometimes when you're having a day like we were having up in Ulster, the referees' decisions really they are just the cherry on top rather than the cake itself.
There's no way whether any of them would have changed the course of the game and we mightn't have played as badly or whatever. I don't know, but the way the game unfolded, you couldn't say we deserved to even get a losing bonus point.
And we did throw away the losing bonus point. I mean, we could have stopped, pinched one out of there, but we did kind of throw it away at the end. Our scrum was good. I thought our scrum was dominant.
Theirs isn't great though.
No, it is. It isn't poor. But where it's leading me to is, I mean, we have a very strong set piece in terms of our scrum. Our line out is functional. We win enough of our own ball. The question is, what do we do with it when we win it? Right? If we win ball, what are we going to do? Are we going to take quick ball off the top to give to our backs to drop, or are we going to maul it so our forwards can drop it? But I mean, we've seen two if you like unit failures, and it means that it's what do we do with primary possession? Yeah,
well, that's where it all falls apart, isn't it? Like, if you can't hit Devin Toner in the line out, I mean, you can hit him without a lifter nearly. The guy is just so tall. He's hard enough to lift, being tall, being heavy and kind of awkward to lift. But anybody with a bit of practice can hit Devin Toner. You and me, with a week's practice, could hit Devin Toner in the line out. But after that, like you say, what do you do with the ball? We had a season where it was a World Cup season. We gave almost 20 players to the World Cup. It was always going to be a bit of a shambles. Without the players came back a week before we were going into the Heineken Cup, and it was a hiding to nothing. Before Matt O'Connor left, we were kind of thinking maybe it'd be the best way just to blow off a season under him, and I think it was a more constructive use to develop Leo Cullen as a coach. Because bearing in mind that unless you got in Joe Schmidt, you weren't going to really, and he was otherwise occupied.
He's busy.
You weren't going to develop too much in a World Cup year in a team that gives so many of its players. And say that, look at Glasgow.
Yeah.
So
it took them a while, but
just contradicted myself.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, we got a question in from Mark Kennedy about you're talking about the apparent lack of skills in under pressure. He mentioned specifically Hayden Triggs initially, and then others. Last season, we looked like a team that was unskilled, and I put down to our skills coach not been around a lot. You know, he was only around a certain amount of time because he was double jobbing with the Ireland team. Now we don't have a skills coach, and we look even worse.
Well, there was also rumoured to be the Matt O'Connor's way of coaching was to be sure of the catch rather than putting the ball out in front of people. You were supposed to make sure it got to the player, so which took the sting out of attack. We've kind of got a bit of that fluence back. Like you say, we haven't done much with it, but we've kind of looked a bit better, and generally without our internationals, mainly because they haven't been there enough to develop.
The problem I have is looking better and being better aren't the same thing.
True.
We are brilliant at getting the ball from one touchline to the other. I mean, we can do it, but as soon as somebody comes near us, it's getting dropped, and that's the problem. That's where skills. That's where it's no use having a skill that's not tested under pressure. It's the execution of skill under pressure that makes the good team, and that's I think where we've missed a trick by not replacing Richie Murphy. I think we stuck with half of Richie Murphy for too long. I think Richie should have been sent full time to the Irish team, and I think we should have replaced him with a new skills coach. And I still think we need a skills coach.
Well, again, World Cup year, all kinds of stuff going on. Maybe they have a huge extra coach signing plan for the whether it's a skills coach, whether it's
if you look at one of the thing that kind of is setting Connacht apart from anyone is their skills.
Absolutely.
And where's their biggest budget outlay? It's Dave Ellis
and Glasgow.
Yeah,
similar. I don't know who their. I know Gregor Townsend is their main coach, but I don't know who their skills coach is or who does all their bits and pieces in their backs, or But obviously in Connacht we know who it is. And Pat Lam has instilled that thing from day one, the handling, like Joe Schmidt did. He wanted to turn us into the best passing team in Europe, etc. And we got there.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of basics that we don't see them in training every week. We don't see what they do.
Oh, well, I'll have I saw them in training yesterday.
Apart from you seeing them in training yesterday, but generally we don't see what they're doing and what kind of drills they're doing and what kind of focus is on skills and I'm sure they don't just sit there twiddling their thumbs at training, so they're obviously doing something. What it is and what the mental side of it is what seems to be missing. In fact, Johnny Sexton kind of alluded to that in the paper the other day, where he said it's there's a cultural deficit from when he was there last, and he's kind of not pointing the finger at anybody in particular, but saying that it's going to take a while to get back to where everybody wants to get to. And that requires somebody more requires somebody higher up the coaching chain, really, to drive home the culture, if you like. Like Pat Lam has an obvious culture in the team where he doesn't like guys running at bodies, wants them running at space, he wants the ball, he wants to focus on their skills, where he famously has them carrying a rugby ball around for the first year or so. And it's that kind of, it's the mental side of that is what makes the players good. It's buying into the thought and what Johnny Sexton is calling culture, buying into that whole thing and getting the whole team on the same page. That's how you improve that kind of thing.
I mean, Sexton was talking about how things changed since he came back. When he left a Leinster team that when, if a substitution was made, that substitution made a significant contribution to the effort. Improved the team, or certainly didn't disimprove it. You think like one of the things we were talking about the game against Ulster was that that ourselves and Ulster would be pretty much tight for an hour, we'll say, and then our what we believed was a superior bench and our use of substitutions would kick in and we'd pull away.
Yeah.
Now I would have to say that I thought that nearly every substitution we made disimproved the
backwards,
team.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of teams are like that. Like, it takes really hard work because everybody's going to start their best players. So it takes really seriously hard work. And that game you pointed to, Ulster and Twickenham, is an absolute master class of that. And you guys like Henke van der Merwe, Sean Cronin, both coming on scoring tries. All the people who came on that day, like you say, made
Nathan
an impact.
White.
Nathan White, yeah, and look at Nathan White now. He's not the player he was, and he's playing for Pat Lam and Connacht, but he's not what he was under Joe Schmidt and Leinster. So, to get to that level, it takes serious work, and especially when you've got teams like Toulon who can just buy in that. I'm not criticising them for it, but
It's
it's
a
a
system
fact.
that's there.
It's a fact, and they can just buy in a 23, and they can have a 40. That's better than most teams' first. Their players number 30 to 40 are better than a lot of players number 1 to 10. So that under our system, that takes a lot of work to get to, and we can get there again, but we're not going to be getting there this season for sure. We'd be lucky to get there by end of next season, to be honest.
Well, we do have we have another chance to secure, if you like, our home semi-final.
Yeah.
And that's against the Conquerors of Connacht.
Yeah.
Treviso. Did not see that one coming.
Me neither. I thought they could have. Like, Glasgow had their best players sitting in the stands drinking cider, and they still put 70 points on Zebra. Like, that is outrageous. I know it's only Zebra, and I know they're probably disinterested away from home, but that is outrageous. And Connacht go over. They did rest a few, in fairness, but to lose that game, it looked like the first half was harem scarum. It looked like both teams were going to get a bonus point before half time. But Connacht really should have tightened it up in the second half. I was convinced when Peter Robb went over for that try, I was convinced they were going to get the fourth one and all would be well. But sadly, they left it far too late, and felt the scrum was what let them down, and I think the scrum was what gave away the penalty.
It was. I mean, in fairness to Treviso, I mean, it was a hell of a kick. I mean, it was a long kick. I mean,
they had a hell of a scrum too. They were obviously targeting that game as a possible. And it got them. I think it's the first time they've been ahead of Treviso or ahead of Zebra all season.
Yeah, it is actually. Yeah,
back to back. They went down back to back at Christmas to them. So it's a bit of a miracle. I think they're only a point ahead now. So that's.
Yeah, I don't think
it's an advantage Zebra. They're playing the Dragons in Zebra Town.
Yeah, in Zebra Town. I don't think it's going to make a huge amount of difference to us, though. I don't think that win will suddenly turn Treviso's season around.
No.
How do you see it? 5-pointer? We have to see it as a 5-pointer.
We have to see it as a 5-pointer, and to be honest, if we put out the team we put out last week to make amends, they need their arses kicked if they don't get a 5-pointer out of that. Even with the 5-pointer, though, we're Connacht are unlikely to put a 5-pointer on Glasgow, but you never know.
Yeah, that's going to be.
Never know.
That's a huge. I mean, to a certain extent,
that'll put
that's
us
almost
into third place.
Yeah, that's almost more of a game.
It'd certainly take us off the top anyway.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about the top. First or second, it could.
But if you're first, you're playing either Ulster or Scarlet.
Well,
if you're second, you're playing either Connacht or Glasgow.
Glasgow, yeah. Well, that's true enough. But I still think that the important thing for Leinster is to secure the home semi-final first of all.
Yeah.
And then after that, we can worry about who we play. And I think we have to go out and look at it, that Treviso have to be put to the sword. I mean, the players have to apologise for their performance somehow. What better way to do it in front of, in your final regular season game in front of well, let's face it, a 3/4 full house.
The other thing, I personally anyway criticised Leo for a few weeks ago was resting the. Well, originally I was criticising the IRFU, but I don't think it was them that we rested guys like Ringrose and Issa Nasewa.
Johnny.
Well, I'm just picking them out because they're not really Irish players. They're not central to Ireland's thing. Johnny Sexton, Jamie Heaslip, Jack McGrath, you could argue, and having Toner on the bench, could have been IRFU. I don't think any of them were, though. I think they were literally just Leo deciding to.
Bad coaching that then, sure.
Well, I think that this is the kind of thing we should. That was the game that he could have got everybody a bit more practice together, because I think I made the point at the time that there was a player missing from each one of the front row, second row, back row, centres, half backs, back three. There was a player missing from each of those subgroups, if you like, and they're combinations that you need to get running together. I mean, we've always done it ahead of Europe. We have a big Munster game and play all the players that are going to play the following week. This was like we had a week off after that game. We've week off. We had another week now after the game next week. So it wasn't
as if they were going to be running to the ground.
Yeah.
It was a strange, because we went into the Ulster game then without any kind of cohesiveness whatsoever.
Exactly.
But that's
if that team had played Edinburgh, I know his gamble paid off from the point of view of we still got a bonus point win against Edinburgh. fair enough. But did his plan pay off in terms of how the
Yeah, well, I mean,
how he played against us?
my attitude was it would be better to take 8 points from those 2 games than 5.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But that's there's nothing we can do about that now. That's done
No.
dusted. So what we can do really is beat Treviso and hopefully finish first. But the game in between Connacht and Glasgow is actually almost more important to us than our own game.
Yeah. If Connacht can somehow manage to win that game, we are top in the league. If they can't, we're coming second, and we're probably going to play Connacht in the RDS. And to be honest, I'd fancy playing Ulster or Scarlets ahead of that.
I'd much prefer to play Ulster and Scarlets. I mean, and the thing about Connacht is it doesn't matter if we're better, if they're better. I mean, all bets are off because it's an Interpro.
Yeah.
I mean, you could say that Leinster are a better team than Ulster have been all season, and Ulster handed us their asses on a plate.
Big time, yeah. Well, but that might be a bit of motivation for a semi-final.
Might be. They want the plate back.
Yeah, exactly. So, ideally, we'd like to face them in a semi-final. There is the nightmare scenario where even if we get a 5 point, well, obviously the nightmare scenario is not beating Treviso, but
the other nightmare scenario.
The other nightmare scenario is if we could possibly end up third if the sequence of events goes Glasgow get 2 bonus points and Connacht get 1 bonus point. I think that'll put us in third place and mean we have to go to Glasgow for a semi-final.
Good Lord.
So it's an unlikely combination of results, but
that would require some serious.
Either that or us failing to get 4 tries against Treviso, I think will put us in that kind of a position.
Well, I mean, sometimes Leinster aren't the. I mean, no matter how good Leinster teams are, sometimes they haven't been the best on a try chase in the past. It's not always been our strongest point.
Yeah, well, you'd have to assume there'll be somebody's boot up their arse all week.
Oh yeah. One would hope so. Other news from last week was Judgment Day.
Oh yeah. It went fairly well.
Yeah, everybody in Wales was at it apparently, by the sounds of things. Not everybody there knew what was going on, but they all seemed to enjoy it, from what I've heard.
Yeah, and there were both high scoring games.
Yeah.
In fact, the Ospreys Cardiff game was even. I thought the Scarlets would get the bonus point against the Dragons, but the other game was 70 points in it.
Yeah, there was. Yeah,
crazy.
Massive upset. Now that's pretty much put Cardiff out of it.
Cardiff, the coming team, are now the going team.
Yeah. Well, here's the question. I mean, it kind of makes things interesting next week for Munster.
Big time.
Because I posited this a couple of weeks ago. Cardiff are a team that find it hard to get up for games even at the best of times. Now they've nothing to play for. Edinburgh obviously have them at home. Edinburgh, we could suggest that Edinburgh will get 5 points.
Possibly, but I don't think. Yeah, it's all about the 2 Welsh-Irish derbies.
Yeah, it puts an awful lot of pressure on Munster though.
To be honest, Munster, you'd imagine Munster will have enough for the Scarlets in Thomond Park. Not a given by any stretch of the imagination, but they only need to win. 3-0 will do them. And they're guaranteed European rugby. So
Munster Tri-Fest then, 3-0.
So, that'll put the Scarlets out, and it'll also do Ulster a solid, presuming they can do something against. In fact, they don't even need to beat the Ospreys. As long as Munster beat the Scarlets, they're gonna go through.
Well, here's the thing now. We're discussing all the permutations and combinations that are possible for the.
Well, here's one, right? The Ospreys thrash Ulster, and even though, Munster still, any win will still keep them ahead of the Ospreys. So both Welsh teams need to win, and if they do, then Ospreys have a chance of getting 6th, and the other lads are going to possibly be in the playoffs.
We're talking about a lot of results that are possible in a number of games that can change 1 through 6 completely, or the key positions of 1 through 6 completely. Is this a sign that the Pro 12 is good? Is it a sign that it's competitive, but not very good?
I think possibly the latter.
Or is it a slice from A and a wee bit from B as well?
I think that the Pro 12 has been made better by the various challenges that are all the way up and down the league. Whereas previously, like teams like Cardiff, if the positions in the table were the same, Cardiff, Scarlets, both Italian teams. None of those would have a thing. Edinburgh probably would have a thing to play for, or even the Ospreys. It'll be just season over. Whereas now with the top six thing and the Italian team thing, and all of those things in the mix, it does make the league more competitive, more exciting. And said that in a World Cup year, I know we keep harking back to it, but a team with all those international, or a league with all those internationals, is going to suffer.
Yeah.
And it's going to have a bit of a crap year. And Europe doesn't lie. There were very few of them in the business end of Europe, and that says everything you need to know.
Yeah.
So yes, our league is competitive, but quality-wise, relative to the other two major leagues in Europe, not very good.
Well, we'll park the Pro 12
This
for a
year,
little
anyway.
bit. One of the news stories that came out over the weekend and was confirmed today is that Cian Kelleher is moving from the Leinster Academy to Connacht, and it's been the subject of a certain amount of discourse. And Mark Kennedy sent us a question, which might kind of be a way of kicking off the discussion. He's talking about the way that I've mentioned in the past, a kind of a battle of wills between David Nucifora and Leinster about academy guys being moved around. And he's wondering, is this what he was wondering? Obviously, he sent these emails before the Cian Kelleher thing came out, and he's wondering, does that tie into what I've been saying about the conspiracy theories, if you like?
Well, conspiracy theories are always going to be just that, and yes, the rumours are all saying that there's a battle of wills with Nucifora and Leinster, and that Leinster don't want to encourage players to go to other provinces, and he wants them to be encouraged.
Very
to
unusual
go to
for a
other
newspaper to
provinces.
print the amount of detail that the Indo went with, though.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying they're not true. I'm saying there is no smoke without fire. So there's obviously some truth to them. It's how they're, what's the word?
Spun?
How they're spun, exactly. Good word. Rabid Leinster fans are going to spin them one way. Rabid IRFU supporters are going to spin them another way. Connacht fans another way. Yes, there is obviously some truth in it, but how far it goes, I've always been of the view that the IRFU benefit Leinster more than they hinder them. Now that may be twisting a little bit. It may, that balance may be shifting slightly, but I still think, on balance, while they do piss us off at times with their resting players or refusing foreign signings, or
the whole resting players and indeed refusing foreign signings doesn't bother me that much. It's just the idea of the lack of control or the imposition of external control, perhaps against the plans of the coaching staff. I mean, I've always said that the IRFU do a great job running rugby in Ireland. I just don't think they're particularly brilliant at running professional rugby.
I agree.
I think that the problem that this raises now is that now we've seen the Connacht are wearing big boy pants, and they're going to play with the big boys. Then who should we be targeting to poach from Connacht?
Well, we've got their best player, so what more do you want?
We can have other players.
The relationship tends to be like the two high profile guys we've got have been Mike
Out of
McCarthy.
contract.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying we've snatched them or we've done anything underhand, but I'm just saying the people we've got from them have been guys that they would have really wanted to keep, whereas the people they've got from us are in the main people we weren't as cheesed off to lose. Now, having said that, Cian Kelleher would have been somebody that I think there's a bit of a reaction like Felix Jones to Munster.
Well, I actually thought Felix Jones showed a huge amount of professionalism in going to Munster.
Oh, absolutely, but I know that Cheika was pissed off.
Oh, he was. Of course he was.
And
Felix Jones was a very good player. Because it's weird getting used to saying was about Felix Jones. Felix Jones was a very good player, but he could look and he had a guy who's maybe only 2 years older than him was the Irish incumbent.
Yeah.
A guy who's maybe only a year or 2 years younger than him was coming up behind him, and then Andrew Conway behind that. I think actually Felix Jones looked at and saw the likes of, maybe what Kieran Lewis did or what Stephen Keogh did, and they kind of hung around in their home province too long before making the move. I think what he did was the right thing. I think to a certain extent what Andrew Conway did was the right thing as well. But I'm not sure about Cian Kelleher. I'm not sure he's made the right move.
Hard to see a downside for him, to be honest, in the short term.
Well,
if it works out really well, let's say he really fancies playing for Leinster, in his heart of hearts, if things work out well from down there and he's kicking ass, he's going to be in the shop window for Leinster. And if,
I'm not one of these who's, I hope he goes away and I hope he's miserable and he has a horrible time and it rains all the time and he catches dry rot and he drinks the water and cryptosporidium infests his entire body. That's not my thing. Although I did manage to come up with all that quite well. That's not my thing. My query for him is, has he gone from a position in Leinster where he had actually a clear path ahead of him to a situation in Connacht where he doesn't, and where he's actually less likely to get game time than he would be in Leinster?
Well, that's hard to say. They seem to have a fair few quality wingers there with Healy, Adeoloken, Danny Poolman, Tiernan O'Halloran a full back. There's quite a few leader as well. There's quite a few lads ahead of him down there starting. Whether he sprints past any of them or not is another, and that's a good
analogy.
Turn of phrase, because sprinting is something he's bloody good at. In fact, some of the A games I saw him, I was giving Ed about him passing and saying, "He doesn't pass much. He doesn't have to really. He can just score."
Don't. The thing, I mean, he's the latest in a line of, well, not a line, but there's been a couple of Leinster back three players. I mean, they seem upset about losing Kelleher. But he's the first that they've lost that they've seemed upset about, really, in terms of...
Since Felix Jones.
I mean, is there an issue with the Leinster Academy in terms of the actual quality?
Quality of the players going through it, or the quality
of the players in the backs in Leinster rugby?
Mm.
You look at all the best young players that Leinster Academy has turned out. They've all been forwards. They've all been single digits. And I include Luke McGrath in that. It's been a long time, and people have said this is a bad thing. I'm not sure if it is, because there's only so much silk you can attach to a sow's ear. Is the raw talent there? I mean, we saw Darren Hudson went to Bristol, and now he can't get a game for Bristol United, which is their reserve league team. Sam Coughlin-Murray went over, didn't really work out for him. There's been a couple who've taken the path away because they couldn't get into the Leinster team for whatever reason, but haven't really improved at all.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, there are a number of contributory factors. Obviously, the incumbents we had going back 10 years ago were incredible. Yeah. And some of them have only just hung up their boots 2 years ago. And in fact, Darcy only hung up his boots at the beginning of the season. Yeah. So they've been roadblocks. Obviously, when you're that good, you get selected. Ahead of everybody. Plus, all of our foreign signings have been pretty much in the backs. I know Hayden Triggs, a couple of others, but we've had the Irish pack for so long, and we've had guys coming through the academy in the forwards, but the backs, we just haven't had that. Because we've got the like Visa Nazewa, saying Kirshner, good players, but they're good enough to keep these guys out of the team, but maybe, not incredible. And you've got guys who are Irish internationals like Dave Carney, Rob Carney, Luke Fitzgerald, Fergus McFadden. Like those guys, it's going to be hard with that amount of players plus the two NIQs.
When you stick Andrew Trimble and Tommy Bowe onto that, and that is Joe's
panel of wingers.
Back three options. Those are the guys he likes. So I appreciate that. It's just it's
none of them are Brian O'Driscoll. None of the players we've just named, are, and even Isa Nazewa is no longer he's still fabulous and he's got great heart, great professionalism, but he's not as good as he was 3 years ago.
No.
Having said that, as good as he was 3 years ago is so fucking good that.
But that's I mean, and there's still guys. I mean, if you look at it this way, Gary Ringrose has been a revelation this year.
Massive exception.
He's been superb. I'm very thoughtful or very hopeful for Adam Byrne.
Or Ross Byrne for that matter. Or Ross Byrne for that matter.
Ross Byrne, but in terms of like guys who've had outside backs, and I've had a bit of a run in the team. I think Adam Byrne's looked excellent. I think that the situation with Keane Keller is slightly different from, say, Darren Hudson or Sam Coughlin-Murray, because Leinster didn't seem to really care all that much. I mean, they were sad to see them go, but they didn't kill themselves trying to keep them. You can see by the way that the story's been spun in the media, by the way Leinster have not bothered to comment until after press is closed. that Leinster are actually a bit peaked by this one.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the other thing everybody's saying is he has the pace that we're lacking, because we don't really have. Luke Fitzgerald is probably now our fastest back, and he's not always there. Easton Asewa, again, great and all as he is, pace isn't his thing right now at 33 or whatever age he is. So we don't, Rob Kearney's no slouch, but again, he's not an out and out burner, like King Kelleher seems to be. So to lose a player, you can't coach speed.
Yeah.
Well, you can a little bit. You can get your.
You can maximize it and harness it, but you can't if it's not there. There's nothing you can do with it.
Can't, yeah. So, we really need somebody with a bit of pace in the back line that's going to cut through and fix it.
We do look very one-paced, don't we?
Yeah.
We're a very one-paced team, with the exception of Gary Ringrose.
Maybe that's why they're pissed off at losing, or one of the reasons why they're pissed off at losing.
I think he's the last. I think he's the first player since Felix that Leinster are genuinely annoyed at losing. Yeah.
So, well, the upside for maybe him and Leinster is that if he really sets things on fire down there, that he could come back after a couple of years. I believe he's a 2-year contract.
Yeah, it's a 2-year contract.
So he could come back after a couple of years and rescue us from our mediocrity if we're still having it.
What interests me is, will there be a quid pro quo?
Well, we've already got Robbie Henshaw.
No, but Robbie Henshaw is an Irish qualified player who is out of contract. I mean, that's neither here nor there. There has to be something in it for us to sweeten the pot. I wonder.
Does there?
Well, one would hope so. Otherwise, then everything I'm saying about Newsaford is true.
Well, maybe we're getting our scrum half that was rumoured last month.
We've been
2 months ago.
Which is this, number 3 or number 4 scrum half? It's we're still on Jamie Gibson Park, are we?
Yeah.
I suppose it's better than Nick White, Nick Groom.
They were real left wing kind of rumours.
Conrad Hoffman.
It's been stated in the New Zealand media that he's coming.
It has. I was reading the story today, actually, from beginning of April, on stuff.co.nz, that he was coming. There was a piece actually about New Zealand falling prey to us nasty Northern Hemisphere types and our project player system. They're less than impressed with it.
I don't blame them, to be honest with you. It's not a great. I'm all for us harnessing it because it's the rules, but I don't think they're great rules.
Yeah.
I'd rather see the rules changed, but if they're not going to be changed, I'd rather we took advantage of them.
There is, well, I'd be very firmly of a similar mind. I was happier when guys who came up here to play rugby were here long enough to qualify, rather than guys came up here to qualify and then stayed long enough.
Yeah.
As the more the Andy Ward approach than the other, but it's the modern world we live in. We have to respond to.
Well, when in a year's time or in less than a year's time, when Bundy Aki comes qualified to play for Ireland, I don't think
and moves to Munster.
I don't think very many people are gonna have an objection to that.
Oh, I don't think so. Well, you will find some of the. I mean, people are legitimately. There's two groups. There's the if you like the birthers, and then there's people who are legitimately worried about
diluting our team. And not giving the guys.
Diluting has is a word that has connotations, but kind of moving away from the sense of place that playing for a national team is supposed to engender,
and also not rewarding the guy, the best guy in that position in the country that's come up through the system.
Yeah, it kind of lops the bottom off the pyramid, doesn't it, and leaves the kind of capstone floating in midair, which is not a very secure position for it to be in.
But what I think is that rather than I really hate when people attack the player. I'd rather attack the system. I'd rather say we should get this rule changed rather than saying well, Jared Payne shouldn't be playing for Ireland.
No, I agree entirely. I mean, Jared Payne has never. I'm quite happy for Jared Payne to represent me and Richard Strauss and.
Absolutely, I am. But if the thing to attack is the rule and not play the ball and not the man. Play the rule and not the man.
Play the rule and not the man. So predictions for the weekend. I mean, we've got this whole big weekend and stuff. Leinster are probably, because our game is the one that's perceived as been the gimme. Leinster aren't actually been covered on television, so
I think we're the only one.
I think we are the only one because we're pretty much the only game that there's not a huge amount riding on. So your prediction for the Leinster Treviso game?
Leinster to stagger to 4 tries and then after they stagger, maybe they'll run in a few more, or maybe they'll
Make hard work of the first four and then move away, kind of thing.
yeah, that could happen. They could also just barely make the fourth try in 78 minutes as well. It wouldn't surprise me.
But
I
to a
think they'll get there somehow. Though.
Yeah, kind of that's kind of, if you like, one hand. On the other hand, you got Connacht and Glasgow out west. Might be a game that's worth watching.
Oh, I would think it'll be the game of the weekend. The two best sides
6-3.
in the league going hammer and dongs at each other.
6-3 in a windy sports ground.
As long as it's 6-3 to Connacht, I'll be very happy.
One would hope so. I mean, the rugby book teams have played, certainly. I mean, we discussed, we touched on it earlier, that Glasgow were the only team that were as hit for players in the World Cup as we were. But they seem to have managed to, slowly build up a momentum, and, they are back to where they were 12 months ago. There was an element of difficult second album syndrome about Glasgow.
Yeah, and look at how, if you look back to January, they were something like 9th place in the league, and now they're top of the league. Like, that is incredible. I don't think they've lost a game. They must have lost a game somewhere along the line, but if they've lost a game since January, it's been won. Because there was a point where they nearly had to win every game to get up on top of the league, to get into the home semi-final, and they bloody did. Off the top of my head, I can't think of a game that they've lost.
I think the last games they lost were in that 1874 Cup or whatever it's called.
Back in January,
over Christmas, yeah. So what do you think?
That's awesome.
Can you predict the score on that one, or is it more kind of a I hope?
My heart wants Connacht to win anyway at all. I don't care how they do it. 6-3 would be perfectly fine, and I'd say Pat Lam would be just as happy with 6-3 as well. My head says that
There was that
Glasgow.
Bundyaki.
Yeah, I think he might be back this week.
Oh, is he? I thought he was going to be out this match.
I heard that he might be there. Anyway, it's I'm not sure, but I think if he's not there, it's definitely Glasgow are definitely going to do it. Him and Muldowney seem to be the linchpins.
Yeah, they really are, aren't
for
they?
various reasons. So if he's there, even on one leg, I'd say that they might sneak it, but Glasgow have to be favourites, even though it's in the sports ground. So I think it'll take a serious game plan from Pat Lam, and the two teams, they look like they're going to try and run at each other.
Well,
and,
I think that's all they know how to do.
A very entertaining game.
The other kind of, if you like, foursome, four ball, I suppose, in Jason's honour, since he's not here. The other four ball is Munster, Scarlets, Cardiff, and Edinburgh. How do you see that panning out?
I think the Scarlets or the Cardiff Edinburgh thing is a bit of a distraction. I don't think there's much. I think it's the Ospreys Ulster and Munster.
Well, I'm coming to the
Cardiff
Ospreys
or
Ulster
Munster
now,
Scarlets are going to be the ones that decide everything. I don't think, like, even if Edinburgh scored 4 tries against Cardiff, they still need Munster to lose.
Yeah, they can't really do it on their own, can they?
And even the Ospreys as well. If they beat Ulster, they still need Munster to lose. So it's Munster's to lose. So I think a losing bonus point would nearly do them. As far as I can make out. Well, I could be wrong there, but certainly if they win, they are definitely, no matter what happens. If the Ospreys and Edinburgh win 100-0, as long as Munster win 6-5, they're gonna get into Europe. And that'll also have a bearing for Ulster, because as long as Munster win, Ulster can actually also lose and still get 4th spot, because they're a point ahead of Scarlets, and for Scarlets to make that up, they obviously can't lose. So as long as Scarlets lose, Ulster are sitting pretty.
It just reiterates what I was saying earlier about how the interdependence of the fixtures really has provided us with a very exciting last weekend.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for that, John. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoy your weekend. Good night.